Good morning, good afternoon and good evening to Europe and the rest of the world. My name is Sabriye Temberken. I'm speaking to you from India, where together with Paul Kronberg we started Kantari. It's a leadership training institute for social change makers from all around the world who want to do a better tomorrow in the social sector and in the environmental sector. I'm blind and I am, like you, an art lover. I would like to take you on a little art journey, on my own art journey. The first part of this art journey is art as an interconnector between blind and sighted. The second part is why do born blind people who have never seen colors before should be able to understand something about colors. And the third part is why we need our fingers to see. Now, coming to the first part. I was born with sight, but my parents found out that I would become blind when I was about 2 years old. But back then I could still see colors. And my parents, both of them are artists. My brother is an artist. And for them it was very, very important that I would see as much as possible from the world. So they gave me colors to paint, but they also showed me photographs, and we traveled a lot. And what they especially did, they went with me through museums. I still remember we went to Madrid and to go through, or Barcelona, I'm not sure, it was Madrid, maybe, where we went to Dali's exhibition, and they were describing me the pictures, the crazy pictures and the installations, and I was fascinated. But what was very, very important in this interaction between my sighted parents and my sighted brother and me was that for them a whole new world of perspective opened up. And for me, I had to, of course, challenge my imagination. I saw still quite a little, or a little bit, but I had to picture whatever they told me. I had to add to the picture that I saw. And that gave me a huge dimension how to imagine my world surrounding me. I feel this is important. Art can be a communicating factor between sighted and the blind. And I do understand, or I do feel it is a win-win for both. Later I became perfectly blind. Why do I say perfectly blind? Now I'm not distracted anymore by sight, but I am still a visual person. I still remember everything in colors and imagine everything new that comes to my visual cortex through my ears, through my nose and through my other senses. Now, when I was a student, in school, in high school, I decided to study Tibetology, mainly because I wanted to have adventure. I wanted to find out new things. I wanted to get new images and new pictures. I saw myself riding on a horseback through the vast countryside of Tibet. So I studied Tibetology in Bonn University and philosophy and sociology, and later, together with my Braille system that I had created for my own studies, I traveled to Tibet to start the first school for the blind. There I met my partner Paul Kronberg from Holland. He is a very sighted person, he's also a very visual person, and together we created a school, a training center for adults, and all kinds of other projects which you can look up in the internet under Braille Without Borders. Now, I don't want to talk about this school, but I would like to talk about the kids that we had. A lot of these kids were completely blind and very often blind from birth. Now, for us it was very important that we connected them to art. Now, how to connect a blind child to art? Of course, the first thing that comes to your mind is music. They were very musical. They were singing and composing. The other part was dance. That is not so usual, but for us it was important that they would move their bodies, that they use their expressions. And then, of course, theater, drama was a very, very important thing to me, because also we children were growing up in a theatre school, and for me it was important that the blind would learn about theatre. And then there was this friend of ours who wanted to paint with our blind kids. Now, painting is something where sighted people would say, wow, this is made by a blind child, how wonderful. Therefore, I had a little bit of an ambivalent feeling about painting. Was that really something that we could be happy with, right? We, the blind, could be happy with. We could look at it and reflect, did I like what I did? Or is that really what I wanted to express? But I let it happen, and we painted. The kids had fun. But of course, for a lot of kids, the question came, what is red? What is blue? They knew red, blue, green from texts, from poems, from a lot of descriptions of their siblings. And of course, they had associations with red and blue and green. For example, when they asked, what is blue? And then their sibling would say, the lake is blue. And then they would put their foot in the lake and they felt, oh, it's very cool. So they felt, yeah, blue must be a cool color. And in fact, a lot of people would say that blue is a cool color. They felt that red was maybe more a warm color, and yellow could be hot, like the yellow sun. And all these associations they had already. But then we thought, how can we widen these associations? And we asked them to think of tastes. How could blue taste? How could yellow taste? And then it became very, very interesting. Not only the temperatures, not only the mood associations. Of course, they heard that anger can be red and jealousy can be yellow, and all these kind of cliché color combinations. But then they really associated their own senses or their own understanding of dimensions of colors. Now, for example, for them, for some of them, they developed their own combinations. They said, if blue is cool, then yogurt must be blue. And apples, especially the sour ones, they must be silver. And in this way, they created new, very poetic combinations of colors, of emotions, of senses, of spices, and of course of temperatures. Now, the question is it important that they use the clichés that sighted people use? I think absolutely not. What is important, though, is that they have new perspective, that colors can give them a new range of language and a new perspective. And this brings me to the third part. Why is it so important to understand that the fingers are the substitute for sight? I want to come from a different angle. We are all talking in Europe, but also in India, about inclusion, the importance of inclusion. And yes, I do feel it is important to integrate blind with sighted people. However, when I hear the word inclusion, I always see one system that friendly accepts the blind into their midst. So basically the blind are locked into a system that is actually made for the sighted. Integration, however, I like the word integration because it shows completion, it shows fulfillment, especially in mathematics. The integral is fulfilling a mathematical task. So therefore, I would like to talk about integration and not so much about inclusion. However, what goes wrong in our system in Germany, for example, but also in India? Blind children are integrated or integrate themselves, if possible, into regular schools. And they have to do a lot of effort to keep up with the sighted kids. Now, while they are doing this effort, a lot of things get lost. For example, sports, physical activities, maybe even friendships, but especially and foremost art. Art is very, very often not considered to be a subject which needs focus, which needs importance in the effort of integrating a child. And I have to admit, I'm a little cross with a lot of sighted special pedagogues who are very much focused on the children being fast in learning, being as fast as the sighted children, using speech synthesizers, not their fingers, not Braille anymore, because speech synthesizers, of course, make everything very fast. Now, when it comes to art, yes, a blind kid will maybe participate well in the music class, maybe, if possible, if the art teacher is very generous, also in the theater class, but whenever it comes to analyzing a picture, the blind kid probably sits in the class and just listens. And this is something that I feel is very, very sad. So now, what is actually necessary? In my opinion, to really create perfect integration between blind and sighted children, we have to rethink art. Art is not only visual, or should be only a visual instrument, or we should use a visual instrument to understand art. Art should be holistically understood. One thing about the German language, we have a term which means begreifen. And begreifen means to touch, to take in your hand. But begreifen also means to understand. And I do feel for sighted and for blind, both, it counts that we should understand with our hands. We should not only use our visual sense to understand art, or maybe our audio sense to understand music, but also we should use our hands to touch, to do begreifen, to begreif a concept, for example. Now, when I say this, a lot of people are focusing on poems, on texts, via listening to a speech synthesizer. Now you can just imagine how a Shakespeare poem sounds like when you are listen to it with a speech synthesizer. You cannot even read between the lines, and that is a big, big disadvantage. Therefore, I always beg towards the special pedagogues, use Braille, encourage children to use Braille, even if it's a little slower than speech synthesizer, but use your finger to really understand. And one more thing. We should also use our hands to have a vehicle to access art. I had a few aha moments in my life. When I was a kid, I went to the German Museum in Bonn, and I found a piece of art which was a stone, a perfectly built stone. It was built like an egg. Well, somebody described it to me. I was never able to touch it, despite the fact that on a big signboard it was written "Pour l'aveugle." But between me and the stone that was created "Pour l'aveugle," for the blind, there was a chain. And there was a German sign, "Don't touch." I sometimes thought that it was the irony of the artist who put this chain there. But later in the internet, we saw that the chain was not meant to put around the piece of art. Another aha moment I had when there was a real accessible exhibition for the blind in the Ludwig Museum in Cologne, where I was able to feel, to touch Barlach statues, bronze Barlach statues. And that was something that I would never forget. When you touch, you don't forget. Just as a conclusion, I do feel that art could be a vehicle for interconnection, for intercommunication between blind and sighted people. I do also feel that art could be a vehicle to find new dimensions, to find new perspectives for the blind, especially those who are born blind and who have never seen before. And I do feel that art could be the pathway to access the invisible, especially when we are able to use our hand and when we are able to touch. Now, my big appeal to the special pedagogues and to the artist: don't leave us out of the world of art. Thank you very much.